Alrighty. Welcome everybody to Geek Out 51. We're doing Rhythm of War, Book 4 of the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. Oh man, so much happened in this book. I watched a couple other spoiler-free reviews just out of curiosity, see everybody's opinion, and they yeah, it makes sense that everyone was disappointed that we didn't get to see a lot of our main characters. Um, it is definitely a singer Parshendi fused main kind of book, but I feel like
Yes.
what we did see of our main characters was very profound.
Yes. Yes. And um, yeah, we're going to do our best to kind of keep the spoilers in chronological order. We
Um,
know that this book is huge. Not everyone binges as hard as we do, listens at 2, 3x speed. So if you guys want to hang out early, we'll do our best to keep it progressive up until a certain point where if we think of it, we'll remind you, no holding back,
yeah, I
all the
don't know how
WTF
well
moments.
I'll be
We'll
able to stay with that because
we'll
I
we'll we'll
don't
do our
stick
best
very chronological.
and keep it at least first quarter-ish or so. But before we forget, cue that epic intro
Oh,
because
buttons.
I always forget it. Yeah. So said it already, say it again. Thank you, Brandon Sanderson, for giving us the teasers, the early chapters. I had so much fun listening to the audiobook on YouTube leading up until the release. And when it dropped, oh my goodness, I binged this so hard. And um, one of the many things I appreciate about Brandon Sanderson is like, even though we want the story to go a certain way, it doesn't always go a certain way, yet it just makes so much sense and it seems so real. I get frustrated with, yeah, again, trying to keep the spoilers um, chronological, but we've talked about it before, like main character immunity, where they could do no wrong. They are perfect. They don't have any challenges, any obstacles, yet all of the radiants are kind of broken in their own way, right? Like,
Or that's one
uh,
thing Brandon Sanderson does really well with is showcasing mental illnesses and finding a way to really, you know, have them have their experiences feel real and seeing them be successful. And
yes,
I'm shedding all over the place. I keep getting these random like hairs.
uh, he
Anyway,
he's really good about doing shout outs and
oh yeah, at the
thanking.
beginning.
Yeah, yeah. And he a couple of the shout outs, I'm going to misquote it, but he pretty much talks about how he does his research when it comes to mental health issues. And uh, one of the reasons why I enjoy him so much, including his other stories, are the main characters aren't these cookie cutter perfect individuals. They're all dealing with their own challenges, and it makes it so much easier for people to relate to them. And even the words that you have to say, like journey before destination. The destination's the same for all of us. It's about the journey. It's about like how we live, how we choose to enjoy those moments. And gosh, like Kaladin's journey, I want to say like we'll try to keep it like first part, second part, but like we followed him from when he was Amaram's army and all the betrayals and watching his brother die before his very eyes and losing all these people around him and struggle with the darkness and depression. And as much as he's like our champion in a way, I want to say it happens. I know it happens within the first 20 chapters.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna totally botch the chronological bit.
it's all good. It's all good. Um, but when, like he
Gets
early on in the
demoted, not
book,
demoted.
yeah, like, oh man, that moment really hit me where I was like, Dalinar, what are you doing? Like, this is our boy. This is Cal. He's the first, right? Like, not
Well,
really, but
it all works out though,
it,
and that's where like, sorry, I'm not chronological here, but Kaladin's journey is just so profound because, or I guess back up real quick. Flying ships,
yes,
pretty amazing.
yes,
That this also is very much a Navani's journey book. Like she came through and really helped us get a lot of insight for the singers, but
and the
back
magic
to
with the
and the
spren.
magic.
Yeah,
Back
yeah,
to Kaladin, like his journey just keeps beating him down and beating him down,
yeah.
and the part where he freezes with Moash as he ends up killing Rashon, who used to be his lord, who got uh, his brother killed, which you get to see how much that really weighs on Kaladin's father as well as Kaladin. And then when he ends up becoming a surgeon again, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is great. Like, this is, you
I
know,
I don't know
what's going to save
why
him.
that took me for a surprise there. Like it shouldn't have when we finally got to Kaladin becoming a surgeon as he went through that little journey in the beginning, like, oh, I could become an ardent and his fight with Zyle
That was
and the
pretty good
whole
too. The
the
whole Type
whole
2 invested entity.
mm-hmm mm-hmm um yeah, like understanding that you still need to go read his other one. Drawing a blank here on the title, the standalone, I think it's Warbreaker. A lot of fun. Uh, yeah, yeah. Kaladin's,
Cal-
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna read it. Calvin's chapters are always a slog at the beginning, and yeah, I could definitely see that, but that's where it's so profound towards the end because
Hmm.
like yeah, he's trying to revert back into being a surgeon and he's enjoying it, but then we
Is he
essentially
though?
see
Is he
that
enjoying it?
Shallan, um, I mean, for
He's
the
kind of
most
getting
part,
some
he was
keys.
enjoying it,
Yeah, I don't
and
know if Kaladin
until
really enjoys anything. Does he?
well, he felt successful until we get to the point where, um, and I love the connections between it because the father essentially finds a guy who has mental health issues while he's still under the oh at his hometown.
Hmm.
Anyway, and we get to see that guy later, and that guy ends up having the Shash brand on his forehead, and essentially the whole causal connection of like we see the darkness inside of him, but he still gets up every day and he still fights. And
Yes.
then yeah, like the whole connection between that and how Kaladin is trying to do things differently to help people with mental health issues and other things like that. And then yeah, we get Shallan's whole revelation.
It's in so many ways such an inspirational story because of that. I will freely admit I spend too much time on Reddit, but I've lost track of how many times I've seen people come out and say, as they struggle with their own mental health issues, how much of an impact these stories have for them. Not just for like the relatability, but just like the lessons that you take away from it, right? Like you're saying with that moment there with Kaladin as he's connecting with the guy who lost his arm in the war and all his family, like the darkness and how you fight every day to get back up, and just how Kaladin's going through all his own struggles, yet he's such an inspiration for everyone else, right? Like if he can do it, if he can push his way through the darkness and keep moving, like who are we? Um, yeah, so powerful.
Jason said he didn't see or sense that he was enjoying it. He was just there. Feel bad for Syl, but I agree. The ending of the arc is always triumphant. I love him saying the words to Dalinar.
Yes, like that moment there, when he finally does say it, and like Dalinar pretty much like pushes against the Stormfather to buy them time. Like very rarely do I just want to like yell or cheer verbally while listening to a book, but like, gosh, what a feel good moment there, right? Um, and yeah, Syl was another character that really developed for us this story. She's always been such a happy go lucky kind of,
A whimsical sprite.
yeah. And she became so much more human in her own right. And like she
Well,
started
that's a
remembering her
whole
first raid
separate
again.
arc or
Yeah.
separate line of thought. The fact that Honor used to be the Parshendes, but now is the humans, and
Mm-hmm.
Adolin's whole arc where Honor is what they perceive Honor to be,
Mm-hmm.
and since the humans were the primary influence for Honor
Yes.
before they betrayed him, they have a lot of human-esque mannerisms.
Yes. Yes. I want to get to the whole honor spren arc in a little bit, but keeping towards the beginning and getting all those pieces out. Um, I wish our buddy, the bearded bookworm, was current. That way we could have had him on uh, just for the whole Moash piece and Moash's character. We were talking about it in the last Stormlight stream, just about how Moash and Kaladin are pretty much like two sides of the same coin, right? Like Kaladin could have really gone down Moash's path or vice versa. Um, but Moash's story arc was very interesting as well. And how Odium, gosh, like we only got through this book, what, like two times when we usually binge it a couple times before we actually do a stream.
Yeah, I've been pretty distracted with life, but
Yeah. And it's a big book. And it only came out like, what, a week and a half ago? Something like that.
eh.
Um, anyway, um, yeah, like it really gives you different perspectives because Moash pretty much had Odium take all the extremes away from him, right? Like where he just didn't feel, right? Like he was kind of
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
numb to everything. And at times, Kaladin almost wished he was numb, right? To where he didn't have the extremes of despair slogging along through it.
Yeah,
Um,
but that wouldn't really fit Kaladin
no.
because when he talks about his time in the army and
Hmm.
how certain people adopt a um, numbness when they're in war, and we get a little bit of that with Yasuna. And
Hmm.
then yeah, it didn't really fit for him, and he couldn't go the surgeon's route where
Yeah.
you have to choose and pick which of what and where to care.
Yes. Yes. Yasna's arc is also interesting. Let's put a marker there and come back to that. What did you think about the early fights with the Parshendi, the I always get that mixed up. We're calling the listeners were the ones that pretty much almost all got wiped out, but
Yeah.
the singers are now what they're calling them. Um, it was really
And then
interesting
you
for
have the Fused and the Regals.
yeah, like early in the books, and I think this is just again Brandon Sanderson's yeah, thank you. Jason's on it today for us. The last listener, Venley. So yeah,
Yeah.
the listeners are her people that ended up getting converted to the fuse. Um, but like I think a lot of time in war, and you talked a little bit on this with Kaladin, it's always so easy to like make them seem so alien, so like the enemy, the end all be all of like they're just evil, right?
Well, I mean,
Yet,
that really solidifies Kaladin's whole turmoil because with Kaladin, when he freezes, when Moash
mm-hmm,
kills the king in the previous book, and when he
mm-hmm,
has several times that he freezes, and that's why we end up with Dalinar trying to have him step down or step away.
right,
But in the reality of the matter, gonna skip forward a little bit, like Honor used to be the Pershendis, used to be the singers. So, yeah. And then we get that moment when we finally break out Hirathiru, and that's the big revelation when
yeah,
Venli is actually a Radiant, and they're pretty much in shock, in awe that, we betrayed them first. And that's why the
humans are the
Spren
void
went
breakers.
to the humans,
Yeah,
and then the humans betrayed them, but even worse. But now, since the Parshmen have sided with Odium, they're not going to go
mm-hmm,
that way, but then they're still divided on it. And that brings it, sorry, full circle to Kaladin when he's freezing and he's like, these are the people who I'm supposed to protect, but he can't justify it because they're on the other side.
mm-hmm,
And in the end all, or in the reality of like, we don't need to fight. We've both been connected to Honor, and we've both been connected to Odium because Odium was the human equivalent original, or
yes,
is just a human.
yes, yes. There's a lot of people I want to talk about, but I'm down to dive into Navani because
Yeah,
like
we
in a
can
lot of
pivot.
ways, this is her book,
Oh yeah.
right? She we spend so much time with her. Um,
So real quick,
go for it.
Brandon Sanderson just kills it in the fact that literally the beginning of every book is the same scene. Like we
Yes,
have been inside this first time, treaty for the beginning of every book.
yes.
And it's just added a little bit more layers to it. And yeah, oh man.
And there's so many additional revelations that come from it. Like when she walks in on her husband, the old king who dies that day, he was chilling with the heralds, right? He had two of the heralds there
I
in the
didn't get
beginning.
the connections between the names. That makes sense though, because they
Um,
were essentially talking about wanting to leave and how close
yeah,
they were.
yeah. And in a way, he made it sound like he was going to kind of like take stuff over in his own way. Like he wanted to live forever, um, kind of like be the one that binds it all together, right?
Yep.
Uh, and again, like we enjoy books and we really enjoy like the action scenes, and it's just shows Brandon Sanderson's amazing writing style that here we are getting excited to read about some middle-aged woman who's geeking out over jewels and magic and doing
Hey,
all that
I'm a
stuff.
techie. I enjoy new tech.
Yeah,
Being
I'm
able
with
to
you.
fly around by
I'm
your
with you.
arm.
That's true. That's true.
But
um
yeah, this was very much like Navani surprised me. It starts off and it kind of sets the tone of she was having turmoil in her marriage, and
Mhm.
the king was off doing other epic adventures all on his own, and pretty much was browbeating her, telling her that she was worthless and she's the opposite of light. And then, that's, we've seen her act like that. She's not actually a
Scholar.
scholar or whatever. She doesn't act or artifabrian, and we see that throughout the previous books, and we see it in the beginning of this one with the whole arm flying device that we get.
Hmm.
But then, the Fuse don't know that, and the Fuse see, hey, you're the head honcho, so they single her out, and she's a queen, and all this, and then that whole, oh man, I can't think of the Fuse name.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it too. The one that was pretty much like the equivalent to the nine who got turned down, like she was a
Oh yeah, she
scholar,
was one of
right?
the nine, and then she
Hmm.
stopped, and then she was
Hmm.
considered crazy because she tried to create a disease that killed everyone, but it didn't.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and then that whole like slow, subtle evolution and the way that she was talking to Hirathiru or the sibling,
Hmm.
and oh man, like she expanded the possibilities so much with her story arc, and the fact
Yeah.
that, oh yeah, the way that the sibling is of cultivation and of the Stormfather.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, we finally got to see more of the history behind the tower. And now, jumping ahead a little bit, sorry guys, no holds bar at this point. I don't know how much more we can really keep it contained, but um, I was really excited and hoping that she was going to bond with Relaine. Um, and then,
He's got more. He's got so much more potential.
yes, yes. Um, But yeah, Navani and the Fuse, their relationship was so interesting. Seeing their synergy was very interesting. And I think that's kind of like foreshadowing towards what's going to come of this war. Because in a lot of ways, everything we learned about the previous desolations repeated itself, consistently. And then this time around, as we've established, is so different, right? Like one of the
Yeah.
orders of Spren is refusing to go back to the humans, they're going to the listeners. And that's where we get like Venli being a Knights Radiant. And then on top of that, just like the other fused and the singers and listeners who are kind of getting tired of the old ways and kind of like breaking off a bit.
Well, I
Um,
like how he strings several different arcs or things along,
mhm,
because towards the beginning, Dalinar is the bondsmith,
right.
and they kill the King of Kings or the final herald who was holding the oath pact together. Moash
Kill.
does. Well, yeah. Well, yeah, if a Spren can be killed and if they're real, and then that whole like conversation with Zyle about how he's a Type 2 invested entity and how he
Mhm.
died but was so invested that his soul escaped but didn't escape, and
Right.
then yeah, the weird stuff there. So anyway, the our current running theory is the oath pack is broken. Later, we get to see a bit where Dalinar ends up touching that other herald
Mhm.
and sees that no, it's not broken, it's just having problems or whatnot. So
Right.
that's, for most of the book, that's our saving grace, is Dalinar's gonna, pull out his spirit bomb and connect everybody and harness the power. And
DBZ
I was
reference for the
thinking
stream,
like
guys.
he was gonna totally use Kaladin as one of them because he's already gone through so much and he'd be able to last. But then with Navani's arc and Venli's arc, and the fact that Oh, the other Fuse who's watching over Navani takes that dagger of that mixed light and kills her own daughter to set her free. And now she knows
Yes.
how to permanently kill all these other things. And so
Yes.
now we've got kind of a different method of ending it, as well
Truly
as
ending it,
the
right?
Fused and the other ones are so overjoyed by the fact that the Spren are coming back to them. You know, through most of these books, they're pretty much like, hey, so the humans betrayed you, the humans betrayed you, you know, the humans killed you. Oh, we've got all these dead eyes, but
Mm-hmm.
honor was of the Parshmen first. So the
Mm-hmm.
Parshmen botched it up before the humans botched it up. So yeah, we've got that whole thing where it's no longer a line in the sand. It's
Mm-hmm.
more which lens you use to look at it because, yeah.
And that's life, right? Like which way you choose to look at this. And the further we get along in the series, it's no longer Voidbringers are evil, you know. Yeah, like we are good. The Knights Radiants
Well,
are the
I
good
kind of
guides. The
saw it
Voidbringers
coming
are
with Brandon Sanderson because he did
yes,
that in his other
yes,
series where he's like, "Oh no, this is the guy you love to hate. These guys are evil." And then you're like, just kidding. Things went a little sideways, and this is a guy who picked up the pieces and kept it together. You're welcome.
yes, yes. Um,
You know, yes, I did want some time to rest.
uh, just because there's so many amazing characters and so many amazing story arcs, just to keep things bouncing around. We'll come back to Navani. We'll come back to Kaladin. Yasna. We called it at the end of last book
You know,
that
I
we
haven't seen a
thought
whole lot of her, but
that, yeah,
continue.
I mean, at the beginning of this series, you figure we'd see a lot more of her, but
Mm-hmm.
she decides to go to Shadesmar for all of book two or whatnot. Anyway, like we called it that they were going to break traditions and she was going to become, do they call her queen, king?
Or yeah, they call her the
Anyway,
queen.
they call her the queen. And then her whole relationship with Hoyd, which I find very interesting. Um, and I just really, really enjoy her dynamic with everyone, including Dalinar, where Dalinar is just so used to having his own way that like they push Yasna into the position of queen, and then Yasna does what Yasna does and
Is out on the
throws.
front line in,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Shard Blade and Shard Plate, and then we
Mm-hmm.
get that whole, you know, incident with Hoyd where he's like, yes, nothing is ever fair, nothing is ever equal, so we need to utilize what we have at hand because other people have separate advantages.
Mm-hmm.
No
Mm-hmm.
holds barred. And so she goes off and does that, and then oh man, the incident with that High Lord, I I,
Yes,
I really really enjoyed that.
it
And there
was
are a
a
couple people
beautiful
in my
scene.
life where if I could challenge them to an honorable duel, skewer them through the neck, watch them die, and then bring them back and be like, "You are nothing. I have
I
already killed you, and I can kill you again." That'd
yes,
make me feel good.
yes.
But in the realm of this story, it really advances their whole things are changing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Dalinar's learning to read. He's stepping
Mm-hmm.
back as a general. He's trying to figure out his bondsmith powers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also just how she's upending all of Alethi society. And even though Dalinar's progressed so far in his own right in like accepting changes and making them himself, Yasna goes a step further, like
Or
freeing
well, he's still
slaves.
struggling with it. He's
Um,
making leaps forwards, but he's struggling with the whole Azish and the way they do their things. And
hmm
then she references how a lot of the stories Dalinar follows there's no, or they don't last very long, and it's pretty much a might makes right mentality,
Hmm.
where the other ones, the king or whoever, can't destroy everything.
Right.
There's checks and balances, and that they've been sustained and stable for longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the mink is an interesting character.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the mink
Yeah.
and the way he's always getting out of stuff. And I felt like at first it was a bit of a cop out for Dalinar, because I really wanted like one of our other guys to step up who has been battling with us. But the fact
Hmm.
that the mink is a wild card, we've seen him be successful in Herdaz, and
Hmm.
the fact that we don't get a whole lot of Lopin in this book. So
I miss Lopin. I miss him a
yeah,
lot.
we get like one little comment where
We don't get much
Kaladin.
of our windrunners in this book, do we? We get like
No,
first
we
couple
don't.
chapters enough to kind of like set up Kaladin, and then when Kaladin steps away, we see a
Yeah, we
little
stopped
bit with
seeing them. Or
Dalinar's.
yeah, when they're over there with oh, the I can't Zeth. Yeah, when
Mm,
Zeth and Dalinar and the Mink are all there, they show up belatedly. But yeah, there's like one liner. Oh. Separate side note.
go for it.
The Horn Eater,
Yes.
uh,
Rock?
Rock, or
Yes.
I can't remember his actual name. Anyway, Rock. His whole arc where he's got to be honorable and his kids are allowed to have different viewpoints and follow their own lead. That
Hmm.
that meant a lot to me. And then, oh man, like, come on, Brandon. That Rock's gonna go to the Horneater Peaks, which we know from the previous book, after our travel through Shadesmar, that is under control by the Fused. He's gonna become a Radiant. He's gonna throw the smackdown on a couple people, and I can't wait, because he's gonna go and he's gonna be like, oh, for my honor, I picked up a weapon to take out freaking how supposed to marry Yasuna.
Oh, Amaran?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes out Amaranth, and then now he's gonna go to his home,
Yes. I
and
I heard this too. The next novella that he does is going to be side story about Rock.
yeah,
Something,
Rock's
something, something,
definitely gonna
Ukaleki.
throw the smackdown, because it's the same story, but not the same story of Zeth. Zeth used to be a Oh, I can't think of the
Truthless?
words. No. His race and people.
Oh,
How his father was always saying the greatest thing you can do is to add to life, and
hmm.
how farmers and everybody are higher up, and we get to see that. But then the swords of amazing power, words
Hmm.
escape me.
Hmm.
They get chosen for it, and then that's when his father starts subtracting. But yeah, that's pretty much how Rock is. Rock is the same thing, but in the mountains, where first child is to get the food and cook and yada yada yada. But then Seth is currently our assassin, so
It,
Rock is probably not going to be an assassin, but he's
he,
definitely going to come back and bust some heads.
he shows through these stories how what you were in the past, like while it's still a part of you and it helps develop you into who you are, it doesn't mean you can't reforge yourself and change yourself, right? Like Zeth was an assassin who, just was truthless and did all these things, but now he has a new purpose in life, a new goal in life, and he can change and make those choices, right?
Well, journey before destination, because
hmm
oftentimes in a lot of their story arcs, they speak as if this is all they can be, which is the end. But as you go through the journey, you take your morals and your values and you, lack of a better analogy, you stress test them or you run your debugger through your program to make sure that it works. And
Yeah.
reality doesn't play fair. Reality throws monkey wrench after, parallel universes, after
Uh,
this is only one universe, Roshar, and several of our people are from other planets, and
yeah.
Damnation is like actually a freaking place that normally we send the fused and our heralds to fight their never-ending world or war. And yeah, like,
It is, but it isn't. Like in a lot of ways, this book kind of expands the universe where it's not like a quote unquote plane of existence, it's another planet. And like we get to see that
or I
through the
think of it kind
fused
of like a
where
solar
they,
system.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you can't travel there and they talk about how the fuse tried, but there's not enough air, there's not enough this, that, and the other. So it's like, oh, like space, like you gotta travel there in other ways. Um, so yeah. Cosmere got a little bit bigger this book, which was fun seeing how it all came together. We definitely got a lot more of the fused and the listeners' lore and story, which is great. And this book really helped me piece together how he was going to kind of like bridge the two parts of this series because we
Yeah,
got
because there are a
first
couple of different
time.
directions we can go.
We
Sorry.
have the first time block, and then there's going to be a massive skip and the second time block. Um, and that's with Odium's deal that they make where they get that. Gosh, I've haven't listened to the last part in a minute, but it was 1,000 years, I think, was part of the deal, right?
Or
Like if
yeah,
he
for if
he
he loses,
loses.
he's stuck to the Roshar district and will not interfere with the fused, because he
hmm
pretty much initially wanted it so that the fuse wouldn't come back, but he's like, well, the oath pact's broken and I can't do that,
hmm
so I
hmm
can't, you know,
Right.
can't
Right.
stick to that.
So I think that's how we'll get that second time hop where we'll actually be able to do what we need to do to really get everything built back up and together. But we'll have it on all sides. Just the gods will be hands off for that 1,000 years.
Okay, that follows along with the Mistborn, because Mistborn Series 1, or first thing,
Era one.
it's Era 1, it's very
Yeah,
involved, and then Era 2, it's kind of like Bobaverse, where, sorry, jumping all over the place, they
that's
want to
what we
fade
do.
into legend,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it makes sense, and then it's, oh man, so sorry, bouncing around again, creativity and the fact that she had a hand in Dalinar, in Taravangian, in Lift, and how that all comes together and the pieces. Like, she's playing chess, or like three-dimensional chess, where everybody else is just playing 2D chess.
Yes, yes.
And oh man, she just executes beautifully, even though we haven't seen much of her. And the fact that Hoyd could have been a god but decided not to.
Yeah, and we learn more about Lift this book about how her body metabolizes food directly into life light instead of the quote unquote stormlight,
Yeah.
and that's how she's unique. And we also learn, like again, like all the Radiants kind of have their own challenges, and for Lift, we get more of the backstory that her mother passed away because we kind of get to see her as a gangly teenager
Yeah.
and
Oh
she's
man.
really upset about that because she wanted to remain her mother's little girl and she didn't want to change.
Yeah, because that was
Um,
her last point of joy. Man,
yeah.
Murray's like his bubs or whatever they call him, the one that wears the mask.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Bubs was a parshman wearing a mask so that people didn't see the marbling of the skin.
Mm,
But after talking to Hoyd or Wit, and after the way Mirage just drops off a lift and is pretty much, understands the situation and how everything works, and that they explain whatever their guild is called,
Ghost Bloods, right?
the Ghost Bloods is a such a big organization. It's from other worlds. Like you
That's
don't
kind of what,
understand. You're
yeah.
still playing 2D chess thinking this is the
Mm-hmm.
world we're living in, but in reality, they're not only funded by a whole separate world. Yeah,
I
that was a big
love
revelation for me.
I love how Brandon does these layers, right? Like there's just so much in each of these books. And then as you understand another layer of things and you go back and you reread or re-listen to the earlier books, you pick up on some of those details and you're just like, oh my goodness, the Cosmere got a little bit bigger. Like it'll be interesting to see as the Cosmere progresses, as we start seeing stuff, or maybe we'll see the Ghost Bloods in some of his other Cosmere stories, and pulling strings and manipulating things. Um, and with that, that is a good transition into Shallan, who's been trying to break away from the Ghost Bloods for so long and Marays, but keeps getting pulled back in, right?
Oh man, her arc was pretty powerful too. The fact
Mm-hmm.
that while we're going through Shadesmar, we get to see the newly formed Deadeye, and that's a big counterpoint against Adolin for the arguments.
Yes.
But we don't figure out until after the fact that a veil is a veil, which I guess I should have seen that coming. But when I think of a veil, I think of like when you get married and they wear that funky headdress and they're like,
Mm,
aha, there you are.
the
That
one
kind of
with all the
veil, which,
feathers, different headdress.
no, that's a different headdress.
Oh, okay.
But, I didn't think of it as like, I guess it is hidden, but they need to
Mm,
see.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Veil gets assassinated. Not really. She gets absorbed into Shallan,
Yes.
and then we get the whole arc of that other Deadeye was her first
Oh my
friend that she
goodness.
ends up killing her mother with. She thought it was Pattern, but as Pattern's talking to her about Yasuna and how his first real memories were when Shallan went into the water to check out that creature, which I have a whole separate side theory on all the giant beasts. Get back to that later, but that is when Pattern was first there. Now, granted, the Radiants are different, and based off the oath they say, they get their armor at a different point. Oh, Kaladin's armor at the end was beautifully
Mm,
done. But Shalon and Pattern, like Pattern couldn't have become a sword at that point in time because she hadn't said the correct oaths, and she didn't want to because of Veil and because of her trying to hide it all. Yeah, so that whole arc of the other one was a Deadeye. And the one thing that kind of irked me is Adolin is talking to his Deadeye. Can't remember her name. Anyway, I totally thought he was going to bring her back, become a Radiant, and they were going to be like, whoa, you can redeem yourself. I thought that's how he was going to get out of it, but we're still just like, oh, well, I think it could happen. So, yeah.
she's grown so much though. It's Maya is his dead eye.
Yeah.
And gosh, like Adolin is just such a likable character in so many ways. And again, just like that whole concept of um, placing limitations on things because you just know it to be true when it's
Well,
not.
and that's a direct correlation to spren because sprens are physical manifestations of a concept or a thought. And then
Yes.
I'll lift spren, who he talks about all his chair arts and how he's the
Yes.
artist and this and that and the whimsical whatever,
Yes.
whatever. And how Adelin's whole conversation or whole arc with the honor spren, and honor is what you make of it because they've
Hmm.
been separated from humans for so long, they're kind of personifying their own ideal of honor. Yeah. So
Yeah.
not putting limitations on it.
Yeah. And just the whole journey through Shadesmar, and how Adelin's like looking forward to getting to spend time with Maya, and um, like as all the other Spren are just like, oh, they're dead eyes. Like, why are you doing anything? Why are you spending any time or energy on them? And he's just like, screw you guys. Like, this is my friend. And he goes and he introduces her to everybody. Um, and
It
gosh, just like,
also
go ahead.
brings it full circle with Kaladin's arc and how Kaladin is abused and broken, and then he starts being a surgeon. Doesn't quite work out. Ends up seeing the Ardentia, where the other insane or whatever have problems of their own, and they're
Hmm.
stuck in their ways. And they can only perceive, 1 plus 1 equaling 2. When you get the media involved, 1 plus 1 equals 3. So the fact of the reality is, did you try anything? And Kaladin doing certain things to help other people. And I want to
Hmm.
say it's Teft who kicks him in the butt and is pretty much like, so when are you going to join in?
Yes.
Come on. And that full
Oh
circle
gosh,
brings it back to
we're
the
not worthy, Tef. Go ahead.
of that's how they perceive things. They are the embodiment of perceived thought and how we think of it.
Hmm.
But, if
Hmm.
you change your theory of how it all works, sorry, that image just didn't make sense. I was like, the M has a vest. Is that supposed to be like a Superman M? What's going
Uh,
on here? But it's
elbow
elbow
bump.
bump
Anyway,
because of COVID.
because of COVID.
Because you can't stick your elbow in your mouth.
I can't. Why not?
Or less
Eh,
people
eh,
stick their elbow in their mouth.
eh. Anyway. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so those are working in parallel, which is just so greatly done.
Hmm.
How and I can't wait until all the Deadeyes start coming back, and I feel it will be similar to Syl because we
Yeah.
get to see Syl essentially. We have quite a few like forward backward moments or backwardly forward moments where Syl gets morose after talking to Dalinar, and she's like, "Why am I the only one who survives?"
Hmm.
Pretty much playing Kaladin's side of the story, but it's her
Hmm.
side of the story because her bonded partner is old and ends up dying. Somehow she doesn't become a Deadeye. And then we get to see Shallan with her initial spren, creates a Deadeye. And then we get to see, yeah, all these other connecting points of how we're going to save them all.
Yes. I have thoughts and feelings on all those. Um, but so much to get to time wise on this like 60-hour book. We go for about an hour and a half typically, give or take. Um, yeah, Maya, her progression, the trial that Adolin maneuvers into, the journey through Shadesmar, and just so much that we learned there. Love it all. Shallan's journey, along with that, with the Dead Eyes and worrying about who betrayed her, um, and
It
then
being
finding out
Pattern
its
and
pattern.
then
Like,
also Vale, because Vale ended up killing uh, Sadius's wife.
mm-hmm, Mm-hmm.
but then she gets absorbed.
Yes, yes. And there were some moments there where we were worried that Shalon was going to go the other direction, right? Like with
Or yeah, the
Formless.
formless.
Mm-hmm. Um, where she was doing so well for so long. Um,
Yeah, but I guess in my understanding, I knew that was a very tenuous situation that, how it's probably a different book. Anyway, it's like pressure on an egg. What happens when you put too much pressure on an egg? And then it's like, it cracks? Yes, it cracks. Like, I saw
uh,
her snapping in some form of another.
yeah, yeah. Um, Jason, I was confused by Syl and Shalon's dead eyes. Did something happen to her as a result of Kaladin's depression, or did Dalinar do something to make her more human? I hope Adolin doesn't become radiant. So, yeah,
First thing,
too many
confused
clones.
by Shalon, or
So,
Syl and Shalon's Deadeye?
yeah, so I think those were two independent things. So,
Mm-hmm.
Syl, the longer that she's bonded to Kaladin, the more she remembers and her memory goes back. So I think part of the reason why she's able to empathize more with Kaladin is that um, she's able to remember her previous Radiant and miss him and kind of like the loss and everything that she didn't necessarily completely remember earlier on in the series.
Yeah, as
Um,
well as he doesn't come out and say that Dalinar did anything
mhm,
with Syl and Dalinar's conversation. Dalinar's pretty much like, I don't know how I would do that,
mhm,
and, I don't want to do that. But then through
mhm.
furthering the bond,
Yeah, yeah. And then Shalon's Deadeye, I think when they quote unquote die is when like the oaths get broken, right?
yeah,
It's not
because
so much if they die because they lose radiance and the Spren are able to rebond with new radiance. But
but the
they
oaths weren't broken. It was just the
correct,
fact that they died.
correct.
Where
So,
for Shallan, after killing her mother, pretty much
mm-hmm,
tells her Spren that she's
mm-hmm,
worthless, doesn't want her, breaks her bond, which
mm-hmm,
kills or makes the Spren a Deadeye.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I'm with Jason. Like there are already a lot of colons that are radiants. Um, and then yeah. Um,
I guess
he's something
Adolin
different.
doesn't need to be a Radiant, and he is so much different. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're right. He's not going to become one just simply due to the fact of Renarin's journey, how he's, everyone keeps telling him, don't get involved, you have problems, you can't do
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Mm-hmm.
similar with David, where David already was slow to begin with, had his cord
Yes.
wrapped around his neck as he was a child, and
Yes.
then that's why he didn't want to speak. And then Dalinar, how
Mm-hmm.
he used to be the Blackthorn, and now he's trying to be the Bondsmith and trying to be a leader and all this other stuff. I could very easily see Adolin pivoting and becoming something different. Maybe he's the human or the mortal side of the structure for all the radiants, but doesn't become radiant himself. I just would
Mm-hmm.
have a hard time with all of the progress in the Deadeye with him not becoming radiant. Maybe he
Yes.
is able to communicate with them, bring them back, and then they bond other people.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I feel like he deserves it at the same time because
Yeah.
that's what he's
Yeah.
struggling with right now. Like he was essentially, the son of the Blackthorn and a great martial, prowess, and wit pretty much is like, oh, all of this is gonna go away. Wait until that person brings out his Kamehameha and all these neatly lined up people just go poof.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. There,
Too many. Yeah, sorry.
no, there was just so much there. Um, but yeah, really enjoyed this Shadesmar arc. We got to understand a lot more about the politics behind Shadesmar, as well as humans being more common than we thought. Some of my favorite scenes were in Shadesmar, where like early on in the book, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is important. Yeah, we need to get honor sprint, but let's go back to the tower. Let's go back to the views. I want to see this stuff. And then we had like those feel good moments where Maya was doing, the exercises with Adolin, and when like Adolin's rushing
Grunted
off to
about it.
defend, yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
Um,
when she's holding that sword like straight out and just growling at them, and they're all like,
mm-hmm,
what is this?"
mm-hmm, right, right. Oh, those feel goods. And then the honor sprint, like the whole trial when the one guy that he saves, the honor sprint that he saves, like breaks script, and starts
Yep.
chanting for Adolin, and then like
They just
still
start
like
whisking people out, like, "Nope, you're making a fuss. Can't have this.
yeah,
I don't care about your opinion."
yeah, time and time again they try to make a sham of that trial, and yeah, yeah, in the end Maya saves the day, and they end up getting some honor sprint to come back with them. um, yeah, yeah, gosh, so many different
And then
characters.
Kaladin's whole like 007
Hmm.
moments and the sibling and Dalinar and Navani both being bondsmiths, one to the Stormfather and one to the sibling. Like,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure all we need is one of it's probably going to be like Lift or something who bonds creativity.
Could be. That would
And
be
then
interesting.
Sorry Not Sorry. Oh my bejesus. Freaking Televangian
Oh
becoming
man,
Odium. Like, I just about lost it. I was like, say what?
we thought we were done with that guy, right? And then
I,
um,
he
he
gave up too
grabs.
easily. It seemed a little bonkers. Oh, okay, yeah. Cultivation, not creativity. Thank you.
Um,
Cultivation to cultivate, to grow. I don't
hmm
know where I got creativity.
All good,
Anyway.
all good. Um, yeah, 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 yeah. Um,
So we've got um yeah, all these great, wonderful things. Dalinar's bonded to the Stormfather, who used to be Honor, but Honor is dead, but turns out what really is death or dead.
it's
Um,
interesting seeing the Stormfather grow this book too,
yeah, but
and how he's developed more, and how his perspective has expanded more.
I felt like he was
Um,
a little whiny.
he was. Um, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, because when the Stormfather is passing Hirathiru and Kaladin's hanging out the window, and
Hmm.
Dalinar is like, "Nope, we gotta go back." Stormfather's like, "Nope, we gotta go forward." Dalinar, you know, starts charging up and goes all fusion ha, and with their powers combined, ends up
Uh,
talking to Kaladin, figuring out the sitch. Finally mounts up all of his stuff, gets to going over there, and just kidding. Turns out the singers are happy that the sprint have come back to them. They're
yes.
about to lay the smackdown on Odium's troops.
What do you think about Venli and Eshonai's chapters? Like, it was interesting seeing a bit about Eshonai,
I thought it
her
was
sister.
good backstory, and
Hmm.
it was one of those like we're fighting for the same reason, we're doing it for the same goals,
Mm-hmm.
but in our own unique way, because they were both essentially trying to help their mother who was coming down with dementia and doesn't exactly spell it out, but
Mm-hmm.
loss of memory and all of this. One is trying to do it through different forms that are supposed to change the way you think and repair it. But I thought the biggest insight was, who was it in the old king's entourage who gave him the spren? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't correlate or connect who that was. And that little spren was the reason everything happened. The reason they killed the king, the reason they started doing the storm form, the way they found all their other forms, and then, for the kicker there, they're not dead.
Yeah. There's so many details in this book. You have to listen to it, read it multiple times, even just like going through twice. Caught so many more details, so many more threads throughout the story leading back that we'll have to listen to it a handful more times before like everything really starts clicking into place and all the pieces that get moved around.
Plus,
Um,
I really enjoyed that arc because we already had our flashback for Kaladin. That was book one
mhm,
for his whole origin.
mhm,
Two was primarily Shallan. Three was primarily Dalinar.
yeah,
Adolin kind of got covered by Dalinar's arc in the whole,
mhm.
like, I burned your mother alive bit. Um,
It was
so
interesting
Adolin's kind of
seeing
been
how the kids
covered.
dealt with that. This book, as like Dalinar kind of like lays it all out in his book about how, hey, I cooked my wife. Um, yeah, yeah,
And then we get to see that same thing with the mink and how, you know, he says, like, oh, oh man,
remind
how's
me
it
of
go
my
down?
kids.
They remind me of my kids. And then
Hmm.
Dalinar's like, yeah, this war has taken, a lot of people from us. And he's like, no, not that one. And then,
Yeah,
that's the,
it's a reminder though. Like,
oh, what's the word for him? What is Lopin? Herdazian.
there you go.
That was the only Herdazian war that he fought when he burned everyone, and that's where the Mink lost his family as well as the Blackthorn lost.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Um, Venli is a character that I started out really hating. And then I still don't like her throughout this book, but she grows on us, right? Like she
I
starts to
see
choose.
her being a linchpin for advancing because the fact that Navani is able to start hearing the songs, and the
Hmm.
fact that by putting the Stormlight gems in the fabrial against her skin,
Hmm.
adopting the correct mindset and singing with the other fused, and
Hmm.
then, the whole I killed you. Oh wait, I didn't kill you. Thanks for saving me from Moash.
Yeah,
Round in circles bit, like,
that kind of took me for a loop there when, like they're working against each other, they're working with each other, they're working against each other.
not really. Like,
She
you got to
does what
think
she
about it. She's
can.
just tired.
Yeah.
She's literally been fighting this for like 7,000 years, and her
Hmm.
daughter has lost her mind,
Hmm.
and she just wants it over. And
Right.
then,
Right.
the respect of another artifabrian or scholar, and the fact that they've had so much more time with it. And
Hmm.
it's very much what Navani was running into, where Navani was a queen, so she had to orchestrate everything. And we get to see that all through her journey.
Hmm.
Beginning chapters, they have the conversation about the Bright Lord trying to figure out something about wrong drawn maps, and the king lays into her like, you're nothing. And that's kind of what the fused is running into, where the fused has to do all this extra and politicking, and used to be one
Hmm.
of the nine, but
Hmm.
that's not gonna get her to the end goal. And
Yeah.
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 But anyway, Venli is the linchpin, along with uh oh
Jason's on it. Um, Rabanael, the fused. Anyway, yeah, and yeah, how she's tired, how she's doing what she can.
Or
Um,
well, just the feeling of loss from her daughter. Her daughter
mhm,
asking where her mother is, and her mother's right there.
yeah, yeah. Um, we develop a lot of empathy for the fused and the listeners, which were supposed to be the big bad monsters under the bed coming
Yeah,
to
but if
destroy,
you've read other works of Brandon, the evil guys aren't evil. They're just playing from their own perspective.
which
And
is
just
life.
like, the whole, all these books, it was pretty much like, oh, essentially, Adolin's arc, you guys killed us. You guys made us dead eyes. Humans are evil, but why did you come to the humans? You used to be of the Parshmen of Parshendi, like what happened there? They obviously did something to tick you off for you to come over here. And yeah, humans are the void bringers because when we came over to this other world, one of them was secretly or whatever, we don't actually know, harboring odium. But then cultivation through the smackdown on odium, black soul sucking sword of mist and
Yeah,
Tale of Vangian, like, oh man.
so much revealed in this book. We brushed on it, but thanks to Maya and the Inkspren, who was Adolin's lawyer, educator, yet testified against him. Yet we find out she looked up Maya's information and found out that like
That
it
was
was
her
her actual
name.
it was her name, so there had to be more to it. So she was kind of doing her own thing. Props to Adolin for doing what he did there in Shadesmar. But they chose, right? Like it wasn't like early on we get it, the image painted that the Radiants pretty much just went rogue, broke their oaths, but it was the Spren and the Radiants together that chose to do what they did.
Yeah, because
So
it's one of
there's
those outside looking in. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's outside looking in where all the continuing to exist Spren felt like the humans broke their oaths, which then made all of the Spren Deadeyes, when in reality it was understood that if we keep on this path, we will destroy everything, that all this is going to bring is destruction. And
mhm,
then that's when Maya pretty much like, we chose to do this. And then that, relates back to Dalinar's vision from the Stormfather when all of the people just give up their shards.
yeah, yeah. You can't take that away from us. Like we made that choice. Um, yeah.
Which that's pretty profound because that's the whole like jumping to conclusions or yeah,
hmm
not
hmm
doing your research. But granted, if everybody's dead, kind of hard to get any information.
We won't get to everything that I want to hit in this, and maybe eventually we'll do another big geek out for the series up until this point when the rest of our buddies get caught up on this. But um, Venli, when Raboniel makes the reveal that um, there are other listeners and that her mom got away and all the feelings that she had with that. Um, they take Verlaine and the fuse slash singers that break away and go after them. Like, I really want to see what happens with that in the next book. Um,
Or
the,
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was whole like Maya's whole testimony where
I don't think we got a lot of the backstory, but it kind of the groundwork got laid there, and we got a little bit of foreshadowing slash like surmising from, I want to say it was the Ink Spren, about the fact that they made a choice. So Maya didn't say more than just, we chose. It wasn't that the humans did everything, like the Spren chose. So yeah, we didn't really see the reasoning behind it, but just some foreshadowing there that it wasn't just the humans, which the Honor Spren were making, or the certain
Yeah.
group of Honor Spren were making that argument that humans can't be trusted. Like their whole case was they break their oaths, they break their oaths. You're no different. Look at this more recent Deadeye, who we found out was Shallan's Deadeye. And we see that, her husband, who made so much progress with Maya, and now Shallan is interested in making amends. And Shallan's defense, like, she was a little girl when that all happened, right? Like
Yeah.
when she broke her
That's
first
just
oaths, like that was almost 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I think they said. And Shallan's, I want to say
I
her
think she
late
was like
teens.
6 or something when she
Yeah.
murdered her mother.
Yeah. So, eh, I'm not making excuses, but like she was a child who just murdered her mom in self-defense.
Or well,
Uh,
that's the next like big saving everybody Brandon Sanderson arc, because primarily we've been with Kaladin, where Kaladin had his brother taken from him due to the pettiness, which really affected Kaladin's father and why he no longer
mhm,
does any of that and is who he is.
mhm.
But since then, we've got a lot more insight into Navani's son, the king who ended up getting killed by Moash's son. I can't remember the kid's name, who's out on campaign with Dalinar. Um, and he's having, the moral dilemma of, I want a sword, that way I won't ever be weak again. So I can defeat the bad people, and then
Yeah.
that kind of relates back to how Shallan killed her first Deadeye and that whole situation, and
Mhm.
how you know traumatizing it can be
It's war.
from a kid's perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, like I was saying, there's so much here that it's really hard to do this book justice in an hour and a half. Um, Kaladin, we finally get the pieces answered of Shard Blade or Shard Plate.
Or plate, yeah. Well, we
Plate,
kind of knew it was the fourth ideal, but the fact that or well, what
how
I
it
got answered
forms.
is it's separate spren, and that's why Syl is like Wind spren, because they're cousins, and the
Yes.
fact that she goes all oh. I would say with our powers combined, Captain Planet, but I think this is more of a Voltron feel.
We gotta get those geeky references in there.
Or I
Um,
guess Power Rangers do it too. What's their
yeah.
verbiage? Anyway, so
I'm
the
trying to
whole
remember
like
that
little
final
kid,
fight scene where like the Windspan were pretty much like appearing to help defend
he
the different.
was throwing his armor onto people like they were about to be hit, and you get the perspective of that little
Yes.
kid who's like, I'm gonna be
Yes.
a windrunner, and then like the armor forms over him, and you
Mm-hmm.
get the little tink or the clang or
Yes.
oh
Yes.
man, the feels.
Oh, and we briefly touched on it, but like the hope and Kaladin's father and how he was so against his son and pretty much like disowned him at one point. And yet as he's going around doing what he does, taking care of people, he has like all these people showing up with a Shash brand on their forehead and just like the feel goods there. And gosh, when Kaladin's mother pretty much like goes up and gets short with him, like don't play dumb with me, like I want you to actually talk to these people and why they're putting the Shash brand on their head and listen to them. and just the hope that he gives them. And
Yeah, that's one that we actually get to see from multiple perspectives because initially I missed it because I was thinking, like, okay, the father's always been like that. But
mm,
in reality, he hasn't because when he defied Rashon, the Bright Lord who was over him, he thought he was winning. But in reality, that's why Rashon was petty and was pretty much like, no, not that son, the other son, and that's when Kaladin's brother ended up being drafted for the army, and then they went all Hunger Games. I volunteer as tribute, and it's
yes,
like, just kidding, you can come too, which destroyed Kaladin, and that's where a lot of his grief comes from.
hmm,
Oh man, beautifully done, Brandon Sanderson, for bringing the toy horse back, and
yes,
how
I wanted to
that was a
talk
big
about that.
thing. And
Hmm.
then also with the other stuff and how Kaladin gets a rock and he starts like putting water on it to see the stuff. Anyway, beautifully done. Glad the horse is back. Want to see more about it. But that whole arc, that whole situation from the father's perspective and how he no longer fights back. He no longer defies anyone. He's destroyed and thinks all I will do is heal. I don't
Right.
care who's holding the sword to my neck. I don't care about any of that because whenever I fought back, everything was taken from me. One of my
Hmm.
sons was killed and the other one became a murderer. Like,
Hmm.
but,
Yes.
it doesn't all come together until the Shash brands and how Kaladin gives him hope and how Kaladin is succeeding in the single form of medicine that the father hasn't, and how he's able to help the mentally ill and the people who have been defeated and can't, you know, do anything for themselves, and they give him or he gives them hope. And then it all comes together as we get chucked out a window and our powers don't work, and then it's the whole like, oh man, the paradox of Moash trying to get him to jump off the edge of the cliff like he would have done when he tried to kill himself before Syl saved him. And he's like, oh, just jump, just jump. And that's whole like battle with Moash and the nightmares into I'm going to go save my father and jump out. It was just
So
all tied
beautiful.
together so beautifully.
So beautifully. And we have to talk about Teft and any other like key
It's
things.
too
We
sad.
it's too sad. It breaks him, but like, oh my gosh, we are not worthy. Like he is a true sergeant through and through. We see how much he's grown. Like he's our addict, fighting the fire moss addiction.
Killed his
Always
parents.
killed his parents, always looking out for Kaladin. Like early on when Kaladin, is retired,
Becomes a
forced to walk
surgeon.
away, becomes a surgeon, and Tef shows up, like, oh my gosh, the feels. It's like, like going through Kaladin's reasoning, like a sergeant's role is always to be by his captain's side. And, as Tef's going through and talking to Kaladin's mom about like how he's not right in the head and this, that, and the other, and making all these excuses. And finally, Kaladin gives in. He's like, all right, let's go. And Tef's just like, all right, so what are we doing today? What do you want me to do? Like, are we wrapping, this and that and the other? And he's
Or
like, I
yeah, you
thought
get
I
to
thought you
see
needed
it.
help. He's like, oh, I know I'm broken in the head. What am I doing?
He comes through several times for him. I want to say there was a scene at the very beginning where they're on the fourth bridge or whatever they call the flying machine,
Hmm.
which I was a little disappointed. We only got to see it for the very beginning, but it served its purpose.
Right.
Um, I want to say he had a profound moment there, and that's when we got a glimpse into Renarin's powers and how Moash was Renarin showed his light and Moash was like losing the ability to give Odium his things, and yeah, we
Hmm.
got more insight into that. But
Hmm.
oh man. And then Tef's like his biggest coup de grace for this was like when he finally breaks down and he's like, did I tell you how I killed my parents? Or whatever.
He's the one pulling them back up,
Yeah, for that
right?
scene.
He's woken up pretty much like butt naked from shitting himself, like all this stuff on the last leg. And he's like, okay, sergeant's job. I gotta motivate these guys and put myself out there. And yeah, yeah, like dang it, Brandon, like you remind us how much we appreciate this old, grouchy addict. And then, oh my goodness, like at the end there, uh, Teft,
Yeah,
we
rest in peace.
we are not worthy. Thank you for what you did. Like it breaks
And that,
Kaladin, and he has that moment you talked about with his brother. And it reminds us, right, like what it truly means. And this can be, unless we got something else, our final wrap up on this before we come back and try to do this book more justice of journey before destination. And when he has the conversation with his brother, like the destination's the same for all of us, right? Like, yes, Teft is dead, but we can't take away from all the good that Teft did, like the journey, like remember those moments, remember like what he gave to us along the way and helped us along the way and contributed and built us up. Um, we have to remember those moments and remember our journey and you know yeah.
yeah, that was very profound. Where I, I guess I see things similar for when other people have someone die in their family or someone they're close to pass away,
Hmm.
and it's sad. Like you need to mourn, you need to grieve, but
Sure.
you gotta remember how they lived, not how they died, kind of deal. Where, yeah, I thought that was very well executed from Brandon Sanderson's perspective. And
Hmm.
yeah, you gotta, like, you can be sad about it happening, but they wouldn't want you to be sad. They would want you to continue on living your life and to
Yes.
excel in things you enjoy. And yeah,
Yes. 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 So well done. um Love this series, like top epic fantasy series for me. It's up there. It's not done yet. um but Brandon
but
Sanderson is a powerhouse getting these books out. Go ahead.
yeah, I read a couple stories where there's like only a main character and a lot more gets fleshed out. Where for this one, there are just so many moving parts and there is no main character.
Hmm.
It deals with the world, so maybe that's the difference I'm running into. But oh man, some of it moves too quick and some of it moves too slow. Like we already knew Adolin was talking to his dead eyes, Maya, and we already were getting the feels that she was coming back, but we still dealt with it this whole book.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then the fact that, okay, maybe the dead eyes can come back, and when he has that whole, battle scene where he brings back Maya earlier than 10 heartbeats, and there's that connection, but now we know that shard plate is the bond between the Spren and their counterpart, but how do you know which of who of what that is? And the difference between each of the radiant trees shard plate, and how it makes sense with Kaladin being windspren, so they can just flit around and pop onto anybody. So essentially just, casting your priest bubble onto a different person.
uh
But then you run into different ones where I'm pretty sure Yasuna can only, pally bubble, where she can only bubble herself. So
Gosh, you're just so good at getting these references in.
Man, I
Um,
need more time to play games.
I just need more time, period. Um, anyway, so the more and more we talk about this book, the more I want to get another stream up of where we are in the Cosmere with the Stormlight Archive. So hop on our Discord server. We're going to keep talking about it in the chat. I'm going to get Pete to be a little bit more consistent on there and not just talk to me about it, talk to the rest of the group.
Yeah, yeah.
He can play well with others, really. Um, yeah, get on our Discord in the links below. Probably going to have another stream about the Stormlight Archive after our buddies get current. We had a couple buddies trying really hard to get caught up, but they just were not done with the book yet. It's huge, we get it, but we've already gotten through it twice, so we just had to talk about it. Um,
Well, we also cheat in the fact that we don't physically read it. We just
hey,
read it with
hey,
our minds
hey,
or our
if we
ears.
learned anything from this book, it was not cheating. We were just not being limited by the perspectives of normal humans, and we, break what other fourth walls we want and read it with our mind slash frame jack to get through this incredible book.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man, like I felt like there were in some of the other books, there was a bit of a disconnect where one of the authors was reading it and then you got a different scene or it switched author or switched narrators and you got a
mm,
disconnect. For this one, I felt like it was pretty solid throughout it. Like there weren't like the same scene read by one and then read by the other. Anyway, I felt like the audiobook was pretty solid for this one.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. These two narrators do most of Sanderson's books, and they're just incredible. Period. End of discussion. I don't think we have our graphics ready, but are
Or I don't
we?
even think we have a plan for next month.
Yeah, yeah. 2020, man. Um, are we going back to the Completionist
uh,
Chronicles
yeah, we
next
got
week?
one more, right?
We got one more, and then we're actually
Or
current.
five.
Yeah, yeah. We're officially current with another series. We're current with Stormlight. We'll be
Yeah.
current with the Completionist Chronicles. Um, we're current with the
Or what is
Bobaverse.
that? Ruthless?
Yes, yes, yes,
Or hold
yes.
on. Buttons. I don't have a full graphic. Uh,
Going back to our lit RPG, Geek Out. Um, Still trying to figure out what we're doing for December. We've been going strong every week. Um, so yeah, next Sunday, Ruthless. Boom. Dakota Kraut.
so, quick little tangent.
Go for it.
Dakota Kraut is newer in the writing, has a different writing style, but yeah, I really enjoyed this series. And it's kind of like the opposite of the Stormlight Archives, where the Stormlight Archives is massive and just has so many things going on. This is very much like a snapshot where it's fairly quick reads in comparison. And yeah, it's a completely different genre, different writing style, but yeah, enjoy it for getting into the lit RPG aspects. Not that one, that one. There we go. Buttons.
Buttons, buttons. Where are the buttons? Yes, yes. So, with that being said, thanks everybody for joining us during this live book discussion of Rhythm of War. Stay tuned for our TBR video when or if we get to it, hopefully here shortly. If not, catch us on Discord, catch us on all the other platforms. And yeah, did I miss anything, Pete?
Nope. Thank you, Jason, for conversating. I appreciate the questions, the assistance with names, because that's probably my biggest weakness.
Yes, yes. Hope to geek out with you guys here soon.
Bye.